What's your name and what did you study?
My name is Eileen Daspro, and I studied international business.
From where is or when did you realize about your intercultural topics interest?
Um, I think honestly, I first became interested in international issues in high school. I took a class in, I think it was international economics, but my professor was a business person. It was a person who worked in a multinational company. And in class, I remember he always would talk about traveling all around the world and working for the company, which I don't remember what company it is now, but he always included these examples in class. And I just remember thinking, that is what I want to do. And I did. I was like in ninth grade or 10th grade. And when I entered the university, that's what I declared was international business.
What are the most important things that you believe that are worth to be emphasized in an intercultural experience?
I'm not sure if I understand the question.
The most important things that you believe that your intercultural experience are important.
Like, why? I'm still not sure if I understand the question. Like, why? In what ways? Why is an intercultural experience important in general? Yeah,
Yes.
like for like someone's like professional development. Is that
Yes.
what you mean? I think it's important for a lot of reasons. Well, I mean, here in Mexico, the majority, if we look from as a reference point, Mexico, the majority of people in the world don't live in Mexico. They live outside of the Mexico. So, and because the economy is increasingly globalized, the likelihood that you're going to have to work or interact with people that are not like you or different like you is inevitable. I mean, it's going to happen. So, if you have any kind of intercultural experience, whether it's living or working overseas or even working with people from different backgrounds in your own home country, it helps you prepare for those kinds of experiences in the future, because they're just going to be more and more of those experiences. I just feel like people are not going to be able to avoid them.
Do you have a story of failure in that you have learned from that history of failed negotiation?
Of a failed negotiation. But like in a cultural experience,
Yeah.
you mean? In a cultural experience? I'm sure I've had many. I have to think about this. I don't know if I could think of a negotiation one right now, like on the spot, but I could say in communication in general. Is that okay? Like if I talk about a communication example in
Yes.
general? I I I'm very direct. I'm from the United States. I'm from New York, and I've been in Mexico since 1994. But even though I've lived here for many, many years, I'm still a New Yorker. I'm still from the United States, and when I think of something, when something comes to my head, I say what I feel. I don't think about it first, and I don't usually say it in a, I don't know, and I maybe don't always say it in the most polite way. And I know on occasion I've hurt some people's feelings, my Mexican colleagues. I mean, that someone will say to me, "Are you mad, Eileen?" And I'm like, "No, I'm not mad. And I'm just saying I'm saying my opinion." Or someone might be taken back that I'm very, very direct, because Mexicans tend to be less direct in their communication style. And I think that's something I've failed many times. Like I'll do it, and then I'll be like, "Oh, why did you should have thought before you spoke, or thought of chosen your words more carefully than when you speak." That's not really negotiation; it's more communication in general. But honestly, that happens to me all the time with students, with colleagues, with my boss. It happens all the time.
How did you decide that the person is the not appropriate for the job
You mean like when I'm hiring someone?
when you are hiring someone?
But in terms of cultural issues, or just in general?
Just in general. Yeah.
Well, I mean, here at the Tech. I'm in charge of hiring people for basically for teaching positions. So when we hire professors here at the Tech, we focus on their academic credentials. I mean, do they have an academic degree in the area that they're going to teach? So if they teach a logistics class, they have to have a degree in logistics. If they teach customs law, they have to have a law degree. It has to be in their area that they teach. Okay. You mean like job searching for international business
Yes.
students in general?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think it's important that I think one thing that you have to do is you have to differentiate yourself from other students in the market. So there are other international business students that are graduate from the Tech and graduate from other universities in Mexico. So it's important that I think our students, in order when they look for a job first, they evaluate their own credentials and kind of what have I done during my career to make myself stand out. So an international experience is fantastic, but if it's an international experience plus a certificate, international certificate plus work experience or internship, that's even better because that helps you stand out from other candidates in the job. I think networking is very, very helpful, not only in Mexico, but in the rest of the world. I mean, who do you know? And who do you know that knows someone? And also involvement in the business community, attend business events and expos and congresses and meet people and network and try to make contacts because, the kind of the traditional way of, sending your resume.
Where have you worked and how did you get experience in that work?
Let's see. My first job was in Honduras. I worked for an NGO in Honduras that was focused on like small business development. Where did I work and what kind of and did I get?
And how did you get experience about being living in another country? How was for you the first time that moved from United States? Did you have like a multicultural shock or something?
I think my first experience living and working overseas was actually in Honduras, and I wasn't in an urban area. I was in a really, really rural area. So yeah, I mean, I definitely went through a cultural shock. It's a really poor country, and I was in a really, really rural area, and I had studied Spanish, but it was very different what I had studied, and then living, a place where no one spoke any English, and my Spanish was not as good as I thought it was, and it was definitely a culture shock. It was, very, very basic, like living conditions also, as well as cultural values, very conservative. So, I think that was probably my worst culture shock was there.
And I imagine like, as the first time that you move overseas, maybe you have a funny history about when you were in Honduras or here in Mexico. I don't know if you have one.
Okay, I might need more time to think about this, you guys. I've had experiences a lot, but I think the ones that are funnier are probably more personal than professional, because the professional ones were probably not so funny when it happened to me. But like on a personal level, I still am challenged a lot with beliefs and belief systems. So I'm like really accustomed to Western medicine. Like if I get sick, I go to the doctor, I take antibiotics. That's just how I was raised, and I still feel the same way. And when I lived in Honduras, and then when I moved to Mexico, I lived in the southern part of Mexico, and first in the rural area and then in the urban area. But I would get sick all the time from anything, including like stomach-related illnesses. And I just always remember the families I would live with, because I often rented an apartment in our house. I remember specifically one family taking out like the herbs and the plants, and I have this one family in particular that took out the egg and did like a limpia with the egg over my body, and I was just like, I'm trying to be culturally appropriate, but at the same time I was really, really sick, and I'm thinking, what are you, at that point I think I lost my cultural sensitivity a little bit, because I was thinking, what are you doing with an egg all over my body? I feel sick, I need to go to the doctor's office. But I generally try to, those kinds of incidents cause me to laugh now. At the time it wasn't a cause of laughter, but yeah, definitely like the clash of kind of belief systems. In terms of medicine and health, that happens all the time. Like people will say to me, "Oh, your throat's sore. Oh, don't drink anything cold." And in the United States, for example, the doctor tells you to do exactly the opposite. If you have a sore throat, they tell you to have Jell-O, ice cream, and cold drinks. And so when I'm not feeling well, that's the first thing I'm accustomed to drinking, and I'll be really sick, and people will see me drinking like cold drinks. I'm like, "Why are you doing that?" I'm like, "Because that's what I'm used to."
Yes.
I think personally, there's probably more funny ones. Professionally, funny one, probably me saying something wrong, because I speak sometimes before I think of what I'm going to say, and I'm sure I've made a mistake many times. I make mistakes all the time. Yeah, I'm sure there are funny ones.
In your multicultural experience, which is the most strong ethic dilemma that you confront, that you can have confront?
I don't think there's one specific one that I could identify, but like on an everyday basis, because I lived and worked in Latin America. So I lived in Venezuela for almost 2 years. I lived in Brazil for over a year, and a lot of time, many years in Mexico. I've always been in Latin America, and I think on an everyday basis, kind of an ethical dilemma that I always face personally is just the role of women in organizations. I mean, that for me on an everyday basis, how women are treated in business and how women are treated in organizations differently because they're women is difficult for me to get accustomed to, and like to see in institutions, to see in companies that the higher level positions are only held by women. That's something that I'm just not, it's very hard for me to embrace when I see really, really capable, I mean, I see the students when they leave, so there's really capable female students and there's really capable male students. And so when then I see them outside and I don't see that same balance, it makes me really mad. It makes me really upset. And I see that on an everyday basis. And I feel that, I've also been hit by that, just like many other women in Latin America have been hit by that. That's the first one. And then the second one, I think, has to do with just nepotism in general, like favoring family members and friends. So, like in the United States, I'm a professor, and my father is a director of a school. So if I wanted a job, like I could, in theory, I could just go to my father and say, Dad, give me a job. It's actually illegal in the United States to do that. It's illegal for you to work like in the same university or school as a family member or report to them. And that's not the case in Mexico. And so I often feel that, I see sometimes people getting positions who know someone who's important or because they're a friend of a friend of a friend, yes, and not based on their merits. And I'm all for networking. I think it's important to network. Networking is a great source of context, but if that person doesn't have, and if you know that they're good, then great. But if you, I do see many incidences of people being promoted or I feel like people being hired or because they know someone or because they're a friend of someone, and not based on merit rather than based on who you know. And I know that's rooted culturally, but when I don't see it a lot, but when I see it.
What type of things do you offer to the overseas teachers and their families?
Yeah, we actually have, starting maybe 2 years ago, we actually now have the tech at the national level have an office of what we call global mobility, and they're just focused on recruiting the foreign professors, hiring them, and helping them in their whole transition process. So from there's a 4 or 5 month process with the immigration that's a little painful. They go through that whole process with them. They help them through that process. Mm-hmm. And then they arrive in Mexico City, and then they go through a 2-week orientation about Mexican culture, the language, survival Spanish, an introduction to the tech. And then all those foreign professors then go to their campuses. So my foreign professors all came here after their initial introduction to Mexico City. And then when once they're here, their introduction is basically just is the normal introduction, like a tour of the campus, stuff that I would do normally, a tour of the campus and meet the other professors and how to use the facilities and things like that. We have, professors are paid, how they're paid is not, or if they bring family members or anything, mm-hmm, the tech helps them with their immigration paperwork. The tech helps them with all the logistics, but it doesn't make in terms of their family, and it does help them find a place to live. Because if they're renting, they need a naval and all that. They don't have anything like that, so they help them with that process. That whole global mobility assists them with that process. And then once they're kind of installed or set here, then the department chair helps, things that happen on a regular basis. So my professor who doesn't speak Spanish has to call, about the electricity or something like that. Yeah. And then I'll call, or my assistant will call. So on an everyday basis, it's here in the department. They're not compensated differently. If you're single or you're a family, that doesn't make a difference. But if a professor comes with their family, the tech will bring they'll help them with their transportation costs, and they will help them bring over their whole family to make sure, because as I'm sure you guys know, expats are not successful if their families are not happy. So you have to keep the family happy. So they bring the families over, and they help them find school, and if they're the age of the tech, they can actually study here at the tech. So yeah, I mean, it's not just the professor, it's the family too.
Okay, that's all the question. Thank you for the interview.
You're welcome.